She was called the court prophet of the White House. Jeane Dixon made many fateful predictions: the attempted assassination of Kennedy and Martin Luther King, the death of Marilyn Monroe, the launch of the first satellite, the tragedy of the Twin Towers, natural disasters of major proportions. As a child, Jeane met a gypsy woman who predicted that the girl would become a very famous prophetess, and even gave her her own magic crystal ball. Jeane never parted with this ball. She believed that it was it that helped to develop her abilities and made her famous. Jeane had an astrological column in one of the magazines, which over time became very popular. Predictions came true, and Jeane Dixon was interested in prominent politicians and public figures. She consulted Winston Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan. The daughter of German immigrants became the most famous American seer, favored by the high society. Not all of her geopolitical predictions were correct, but her popularity never waned. Americans still rank her on a par with Casey and consider her one of the 10 greatest prophets of all time. Most of Dixon's predictions are documented, and there are some that have not yet come true. By many indications, it is clear that they belong to our time. From the political arena of predictions, Jeane retired with her last patron, Ronald Reagan. She enjoyed peace and no longer made loud public statements. She only counseled a small circle of close people. And everything that came to her in visions, and what she saw in her magic ball, carefully recorded in a diary. After her death it was published, and quite a few lines made her admirers wonder what, in fact, we are talking about. Agreed, the phrase 11 September. New York. Twins, now we understand it, but at that time no one could have imagined that what happened would happen. In January 1997, the media began to write about Jeane Dixon again. The magic ball of the seer disappeared. A week later, the woman died, unable to survive the loss of the artifact. After herself, she left several notebooks with predictions. And now, analyzing the predictions of Jeane Dixon in the light of current events, much becomes clear. But, unfortunately, no one has been able to properly decipher and use her notes as a warning and prevention of many significant events that have occurred in recent times or are destined to occur. Virtually all of Dixon's predictions were tragic. This is not surprising. Most prophets see only bad things, because negative events always attract low vibrational human emotions. This is fear, panic, shock. On the subtle plane, where there is no such important component for us as time, a dense cocoon of negative energy is formed around a certain event. Those who see it feel it, consciously or unconsciously emphasize their attention, and the event unfolds before them in detail. How much detail depends on the gift. Jeane Dixon was consulted several times by Franklin Roosevelt. He was worried about the fate of the United States, which at that time was conducting full-scale military operations simultaneously in Europe and the Pacific Ocean. The seer told the president that the endless wars in which America would be mired would significantly undermine its potential and eventually lead the country to collapse. Constant interference in the politics of other states will not end well. Americans will face a crisis from which they will not be able to get out. According to Jeane Dixon's prediction, in the XXI century America will lose its world leadership. The whole world will no longer be orientated on it. The old great country will no longer exist. The seer saw two ways of development of events: either the United States will be divided on territorial basis, i.e. it will disintegrate into separate mini-states, or it will be destroyed by terrible natural cataclysms. She said that one day the US authorities will get too involved in foreign policy, forgetting about their own citizens. Unemployment, crime, and poverty would rise in the country. Ordinary people will start to save themselves, no longer relying on the government. Separate communities with their own economy and law enforcement system will be created. This option of development is the most preferable. The US is going to decline one way or another. So it is better to do it with little blood. But if the authorities decide to return that separatists by force, using the army against their own people, the country will come to a complete and final end. Not only will there be a civil war, but there will be rampant elements that will simply destroy many territories. Modern visionaries confirm the words of Jeane Dixon about the fate of the USA. There is an opinion that Texas, Trump's home state, Arizona, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and all the western states will be the first to secede from the US. The political case against Trump will develop. He will not be allowed to win the election. Due to wild inflation, unemployment, default, the US economy will suffer horrendous losses. Trump will be cleared of all false accusations under public pressure. He will organize a fund to support the public. The public in the western states will fully and absolutely support him in the Texas gubernatorial election. Trump will incorporate Arizona and pull other western states into this coalition. This unification will be beyond the control of the central government in Washington. Trump will announce a referendum on the secession of western states from the US. However, he will not have time to complete the formation of the new state. He will be liquidated by the US intelligence services. But his successor will continue the course started by him. For military support and purchase of military equipment, the western states will turn directly to China. China will not refuse. A new powerful state with its own resources will appear on the western territory of the former US. With the direct support of Russia and China, the western states will repel Washington's attempts to take back these territories. Ever since Roosevelt's time, Russia has been the greatest adversary for the United States. Dixon said that Russian people are mentally very different from Americans, so the two nations will never be able to find a common language. Friendship and partnership between the two countries can't even be dreamed of. But diplomatic peace on mutually beneficial terms is possible. However, it should be thought about in advance, then the situation of America itself will not be so sad. Jeane Dixon saw that the Soviet Union will disintegrate, but she also said that from the fragments of the plundered country will form a powerful state, and by the middle of the XXI century it will be the leading on Earth. Russia together with India would form a powerful alliance, the equal of which had never been seen before. By then, the US and Europe will be mired in a deep economic crisis. Jeane warned that Russia will be able to unite all Slavic lands, and that will be its strength. Many countries would express a desire to join Russia, and by the end of the 21st century, the Slavic Empire would be the largest, most prosperous and richest territory in the world.